Welcome into Mental Notes Live. On today's episode, I've got Dr. Mary Lee Nickerson, and our musical guest for today is Aroe Phoenix and our saxophonist, Keven. DJ Woody, take us in. This is Mental Notes Live, the talk show that gives you tools to grow your faith, mindset, and progress. What's going on, guys? Welcome into today's episode of Mental Notes Live. I'm your boy and your host, Ryan Hale. So glad to have you guys tuning in today. And I've got a very special guest, my dear friend who is a doctor, professional makeup artist, Mary. What's going on, man?
Hey.
So glad to have you on here.
I'm glad to be here.
Right? It feels like this is just right, doesn't it?
It does.
You know, we've been friends for a minute, so I'm glad we can have you on here. And like I said, she is a doctor, very qualified for all your medical needs. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But tell us, for those who don't know, how did you get into the medical field?
Honestly, I think we all go through that moment of college where we don't know what we want to do, really. So I started off as a business major. Okay. I had no idea really what I wanted to do. And then I took a psychology class. Gotcha. And that's when I was like, oh gosh, this is what I want to do, yeah. You know? So, and my aunt, she was the only one in our family that ever went to college. She would always tell me, you know, if you can't get a job in a hospital, you know, they're always going to need employees. That's true job security. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, okay. I knew I didn't want to do anything too invasive just because that takes a lot of time and attention. So once I took the psychology course, it was a no-brainer for me. I went ahead and switched majors, and that was all she wrote from there.
Wow. Yeah. Awesome. Because you've got your doctorate in developmental psychology?
Yes.
Okay, got you. But you say, I think we talked about this before, that is very different from a psychologist. Right?
Yes. So psychologists, they're more clinically trained. They do therapy, counseling. Right. Me, on the other side, it's more like qualitative data. We pretty much focus on how the brain works, why the brain does what it does. I started off at Phoenix Children's as an intern in their child life department. So I was working with the kids that had ADHD, things like that. However, over time, one of the higher ups saw me and they wanted me a part of their team. So the neuro doctor there hired me on. So I was no longer working for free, because I was working for free for Phoenix Children's for about a year. Wow. So I was still having side hustles. I worked at Lolo's. I worked everywhere, you know, just to get my way through school, because I knew what I wanted to do. Right. So I got hired on in the neuro department on their residency team. So they were doing brain surgeries. However, when it would come time for the patient to recover, that's when I would come in, running a lot of tests, pretty much helping them to recover, get back to A. Wow. Yeah. Okay.
And what was that experience like? Like you said, you worked there for a year, and then obviously they brought you onto the team. Mm-hmm. So what was that like after that year of working? What was that like, kind of seeing everything day to day, full time?
Kind of heavy, because, you know, when you're around, and it's mainly children at the Phoenix Children's Hospital. So when you're around so many small people that are dealing with life in ways that you never imagined, as much as it's rewarding, it could be very heavy. Yeah. There were some days that would be great, and some days I would go home and really ask myself, is this what I want to do? You know, because you see a lot. Mm-hmm. So.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really.
I mean, no other way to put it. Yeah. And I know, obviously, like you said, just outside of your job, adding a pandemic on top of that was just probably 10 to 20 times harder. Yes. So you being in the medical field, like I said, like obviously you're not a doctor who works on like the ER or whatever, but you were still working with patients on a day-to-day who were dealing with COVID. So kind of take us through that journey for those who are not in the medical field. What was that like from the beginning of COVID, once we started quarantine, and maybe even before that? What's that journey been like to where we are now with vaccines and everything?
So for us, it was really like a major change. It's like you came into work one day and everything was different. Right at the door, there's all this kind of mask and plastic gear and, you know, robes they want us to put on. And imagine being in that for 12 hours a day. If you want to step away to take a breather, you can't take your stuff off while you're on the floor at any means. You need to go through those double doors, then breathe. Wow. You know, so, and you're you're really scared because you're like, we have all this on. You don't know what your patients have come across or anything like that. So you're in close contact with them, still trying to do your job to the best of your ability, but hoping that you don't put yourself in harm's way or take anything back to your family or your children or anything like that. It started to become heavy as a lot of people chose to stop coming to work. So those of us who were there, that puts 10 times the load on us.
Exactly.
Me working in mental health, with COVID hitting, the mental health went up 40%. So we saw more people than ever before. And at that time, when COVID hit, I had transitioned from Phoenix Children's over to Banner Behavioral Hospital. Therefore, we take completely nothing but psych patients. So most of those people were coming off the streets. They're on drugs, things like that. They're coming in to detox because they're hallucinating for whatever reason. So half of them really don't have true mental health issues. It was more like drug use, a choice. And that's kind of the balance when it comes to mental health, whether it's behavior or mental. Some people choose, and some people, they can't help what they're dealing with. So for us, being the ones that's supposed to help you, it's kind of like, I feel like it's a rubber band, like true resistance. Like, what do I do? What can I do? Is it work? Is it home? So it was really, really a hard time. You never knew. Every day we came in, the rules were different. We would get information about pay cuts, all kind of things, how different protocols would change for the patients. It was terrible. So very, very difficult to get through. And for me having a little one, when they close all the schools, they kick Little Pumpkin out of school. So I was in a place of, what do I do? Of course, I have a lot of family, a strong family behind me that would help me, but ultimately it was my responsibility. And I was already conflicted with being in the middle of a pandemic. So I was one of the ones who chose home over work.
Wow. Okay. Got you. And what was that choice like? Because obviously, like you said, you have been working in the medical field for years now. For a year for free, you've been working with children, now you're working with psych patients. This is something that you've been doing on a day-to-day basis, but it came down to make that decision. What was that decision-making process like for you? Or was it an easy one?
It wasn't easy at all, because I had to think, if I'm not getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, how am I going to take care of anything? I have never not worked since I was like 16. So, but ultimately you have to do what's better for you. And there was really no other option or choice that I had at that point. And then being that makeup kind of was like my college hustle, you know, that's kind of how I helped pay through my master's program, things like that. I just naturally just started the business in 2018, just saying, who knows? So when I said, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm like, how can I make money? I'm like, I'll just take clients. And so when I opened up that schedule, more than I could have ever imagined fell in my lap. And it made me ask myself, like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? You know, all of my family are hustlers. Nobody went to college or anything like that. I told you, only my aunt. So it meant a lot for me to go to school and get my degrees and be something and make my mom proud, you know, but I never thought of working for myself because I didn't know the ins and outs of it. So once I took that leap and I saw it was working in my favor, I just kind of let God do his thing. And it worked. It is working.
Hey, so, that's what happened. No coincidence. So sometimes that's all that needs to happen, is you taking that step of faith and you kind of stepping out there and letting everything fall into place, which is amazing. And obviously you've had a lot of success, and you're grinding and striving towards bigger things right now in the makeup industry, which is amazing. But talking a little more about COVID, because obviously being African Americans struggle with COVID a lot. I saw a stat back in March that said like over 175,000 African Americans had died from COVID. So why do you think we were one of the races that kind of struggle with that the most? Is it lack of health insurance? Is it lack of us going to the doctor? What was the issues that we were struggling with when it came to COVID?
And two of the things you just said play a major role. So first, you got to think of underlying health issues. Black people, we deal with hypertension, which is high blood pressure. You have heart disease, diabetes, all sorts of things. And those things do happen to progress on the downside because of lack of health care, because we don't go to the doctor as often as we should. And that's just that. Aside from that, a lot of us Black people were essential workers. We work at the grocery stores. We clean the hotels. We drive the buses. We work in customer-facing industries that put us more at risk of being exposed to COVID-19.
Yeah.
Secondly, or thirdly rather, where we live. A lot of us live in crowded environments. We don't know who our family members have been around all the time. And we live in more poverty-prone areas where that's just what it is for us, unfortunately. Black people, we didn't catch COVID any more than the next race. However, our mortality rate was much higher.
Yeah.
There's not much recovering for us. And that is because of some of those factors that I named. Gotcha. And then sadly, you still have issues of discrimination when it comes to being in the hospital and being a Black person, which those are things we see all the time. Really? And we keep hearing, you'll see articles about how Black people feel like they didn't get the proper care.
Right.
Things of that nature. And it could be for whatever reason, but that's just one of the lacks of the healthcare system.
And was that something that was still happening a lot throughout COVID as well?
Being that I didn't work closely with COVID patients, I don't know. I read and I seen stuff, of course, but because I didn't deal with it firsthand, I don't like to say.
Right.
But it's hard to say.
Okay, that's fair. But lots of those things that you mentioned are true. And that's what I was hearing a lot about is like the underlying health conditions and stuff like that. And like you said, like you pointed out, it wasn't really us catching it more, but it was us dying from it more, which is the sad part. So when it comes to COVID and now, like obviously we're like a year later into this now, we got the vaccines out and stuff like that. Just because what you're talking about, no health insurance and sometimes not the education for African Americans on vaccines or, like you said, those underlying health conditions and stuff like that. Myself and some other people that look like me were a little nervous to get vaccinated. And obviously I've got some friends who are doctors like yourself as well, and people that I talked to before I chose to get the vaccine. So for yourself, for people who are maybe struggling, obviously this isn't a PSA to get vaccine or not, but what are your thoughts on it, or maybe the importance of getting it, or what would you tell people who are kind of struggling with that decision?
That you need to get educated on it. You need to think about what life you want to lead. What does life look like for you moving forward? Right. If you want to be the person that has to wear a mask everywhere you go all the time, limited to your travel, limited to what you can and can't do, having half of your face covered up, it's all a choice. So again, just like you said, this is not a PSA, but think about the world that we're living in right now. There has to be steps going forward. There has to be a place of recovery. And they're offering the vaccination. So it's like, what are you going to do? And a lot of Black people, they're so against it. They have a lot of their myths and feelings, and nothing against anybody, because you feel how you feel, you know what you know. So I would just say, get educated, learn all you can. You can't base what you want to do off of anyone else's experience. Everyone else's experience has been different when it comes to the vaccination, whether they've gotten it, haven't gotten it, want to get it, or don't. Right. But get educated, therefore you can make a conscious decision to say, yes, I'm going to get vaccinated, or no, I'm not.
Yeah. That's true. That's real. All about the education and trying to figure out, like you said, what's best for you. And more importantly, what choice are you going to make? What life do you want to live? Because that's what it's all about. And you kind of touched on this earlier with the choices, kind of touching on mental health earlier with some of the patients that you were seeing and how it was up 40% when it came to COVID. So for people who have either dealt with mental health in the past or who are dealing with mental health, how important is it to go get help? Or because I heard a friend say to me just the other day that there's a difference between peace and solitude and then feeling lonely. And obviously when we were in quarantine, it's hard to kind of decipher if you're in that peace and solitude, because now you're forced to be in some situations lonely if you live alone or whatnot. So when it comes to mental health, how important is it to, if you're feeling lonely versus the peace and solitude, how important is it to find help or to seek people either like yourself or a psychologist or something like that to get the help that you need?
It's essential. Your mind is how you power through the day. I advise everybody to get some sort of therapy. You can toggle through life's challenges as best you can on your own, but after so long, you're gonna need somebody to say, hey, here are some tips and tools to get through this or that. You can't handle everything on your own, and most people, they don't wanna say that they're dealing with this or that. They're so in denial of saying that they have a problem.
That's true.
That's not good. Accept what is so that you can move forward and be a light to someone else. I feel like everyone should have some sort of therapy at some point in their life, just to make sure that they're toggling through life challenges the best they can and in the right way.
Exactly. That's real. That's what it's all about, in the right way. Having somebody who can, like you said, hold you accountable, but help you go through that process that you need to recover or to deal with whatever you're struggling with. So that's real. Mary, I really appreciate you. This has been an amazing conversation. But you know, I can't let you go without getting a mental note from you. So whether that's a tip, piece of advice, something you want to leave with the audience, what would that mental note be?
Oh, and you told me about this. So before you do anything else, you have to take care of yourself. You won't be good for anybody if you yourself are not one piece. So whatever that means to you, whether it's leaning on your friends, leaning on your family, your church, whoever you have, if you have to find a therapist or just somebody to let off to, make sure you always take care of yourself first, or everything else is just gonna be no good. So always take care of yourself.
Wow, that's real and simple, straight to the point, Mary. I love it. Thank you so much for being here. Before I let you go, tell people where they can find you out on social media or any other platform.
Yes, so since I am a professional makeup artist, I've completely branched
off. A good
off.
one at that.
Yes, I've completely branched off from the psychological world. So you can find me at SlayDownMUA. That's my handle almost everywhere. Okay. That's also my website. So find me there if you need makeup services. I'm your gal. I have a whole team, and they're down to get you going. So
she's really good at what she does.
Thank you.
Definitely reach out. Thank you so much, Mary, for being on.
Of course.
I really appreciate it. Thank you. Today's musical guest is an amazing artist here in Phoenix. She's got such a beautiful, unique sound that I knew I had to bring her on here for you guys. Performing live for you today is Aroe Phoenix, featuring her saxophonist, Keven.
I can look at you. I can face your truth. Tears run down my eyes. What a painful, lame disguise. You just walk on by when my heart's been crucified. All the times we tried, what a beautiful demise. Even through grief, it's still stunning. Love is supreme, but it can also be cunning. All of our dreams, including fame and the money, I'll give it to the dogs, I'll give it to God, yeah, fuck it all. I'll leave it all. Fuck it all, just to heal every tear and every scar in my heart. And I can look at you. I can face your truth. Tears run down my eyes. What a painful, lame disguise. And you just feed me with lies, 'cause your pride keeps you justified. But what about your bait is supposed to keep me alive? Better to be truthful than leave me to die. Betray me with a kiss, betray me with a kiss. Why do me like this when you could have just left? Betray me with a kiss, and this is it. Oh, betray me with a kiss, betray me with one kiss, just to do me like this and to clean up your mess. Betray me with a kiss, holding my lips in your face. And oh, isn't it holy to love someone and to let them leave? You never belong to me. Let your spirit run free. And God, hear my cry in the middle of the night time until I see the sunshine. And I can look at you. I can face your truth. Tears run down my eyes. What a painful, lame disguise. And you just walk on by. You just walk on by. Better to be truthful than leave me to die. Than leave me to die.
so talented. Shout out to Aroe Phoenix and saxophonist Keven for being on the show and blessing us with that amazing performance. Before I let you guys go, I got to leave you with a final thought. My final thought for today is never live in fear. Me and Dr. Mary Lee Nickerson talked a lot about COVID and living through the pandemic and making the right choices for health and safety all throughout your life. And that just made me think that sometimes it's so easy to live in fear, especially during a pandemic. But I want to challenge you, or more so encourage you, to never live in fear. Faith over fear is always my mindset, and I know at times it is hard to have faith, especially in uncertain times, but I want to remind you that true faith is tested in times of uncertainty. So don't let the fear overtake you, but let that faith overtake the fear. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did. As always, I've got to shout out our sponsor and partner for this season of Mental Notes Live, Kafers and Rachel over at Kafers Clothing. You've seen their amazing merchandise all throughout our season, and you'll continue to do the same. But as always, check out their website, kafersclothing.com, and be sure to use the promo code they blessed us with, which is MNL20. So use MNL20 on kafersclothing.com and get 20% off of anything on their website. As always, be sure to hit that like button below, hit the subscribe button to our YouTube channel, and hit that bell up top for post notifications as well. I will see you guys next week. Peace.